Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk to a family lawyer so that she can inform you about what happens when you go through divorce and when and if you need a family lawyer. So I'm delighted to speak with Perpetua Kish, known as Peppy, and welcome, Peppy.
Hello, Jan. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to have you. So before we start, I'd like to read out Peppy's bio, which is very impressive. So Perpetua Kish, known as Peppy, is director and co-founder of the multi-award-winning firm Balance Family Law in Canberra. An outside-the-box thinker and innovator, Peppy fearlessly questions the standard approach to family law, working with her clients and peers to change the conversation about separation and divorce from one of combat to kindness. With a dual background in law and human services and training in conflict coaching, mediation, collaborative law, and parenting coordination, Peppy is a natural social worker who navigates legal issues with clarity and kindness, rarely with the need to seek judicial intervention. For her tenacity, Peppy has been acknowledged with numerous accolades, including, but not limited to, winning the Family Law Partner of the Year at the 2021 Lawyers Weekly Partner of the Year Awards, Sole Practitioner of the Year at the 2021 Australian Law Awards, and within 18 months of launching in 2020, her firm was named Boutique Law Firm of the Year at the Australian Law Awards. In 2022, Peppy was invited to join the judging panels of the 2020 Lawyers Weekly Under 30 and Partner of the Year Awards. She is also the Vice Chair of Connecting Lawyer Mum and has recently joined the board of Pacifica Congress, a not-for-profit organisation that ensures children and families are better equipped to overcome the harm caused by family conflict. She's also the chair and co-founder of the Kind Lawyers Movement and a committee member of the ACT Law Society's Alternative Dispute Resolution Committee. An unashamed dance mum to 2 daughters and 3 naughty cats, she enjoys nothing more than watching her daughters dance and volunteering at local animal sanctuaries on the rare occasion she has spare time. But after reading that, I don't imagine that you would have much spare time, but it's very impressive.
I actually did get to the animal sanctuary on the weekend, actually, with my eldest daughter. We had a great time there with the ponies and the sheep and the goats, actually. It was good fun.
Oh, that's great. And a lovely thing to do with your daughter as well, and to get
Yeah.
out into nature. So
Yeah.
great. Okay, Peppy, so how and when does one begin to look for advice around separation and divorce?
Yeah. So what I've come to realize working in this space for over 12 years, coming up to lucky 13, is when my clients come to see me, they're so overwhelmed and they're, I guess, overloaded with all this information that they're hearing from their friends, from what they see in Google, maybe from other professionals that they're working with, like their accountants. And when they come to see me, above everything else, they're actually quite frightened.
Yes.
And often in a space where I've become aware that if I was to give them the legal advice, which they come thinking that's what they need in that first meeting, I would probably add to that overwhelm and those feelings of fear and uncertainty that they're experiencing at that time. So, what I've come to realize is when people are separating and when they're really not sure when to talk to who to talk to and what they should know moving forward, the first thing that they should be doing is really being aware of what they're experiencing in that moment
Yes.
and really being aware that their feelings, their emotions and everything are really heightened,
Mhm.
and they might grab onto things that they hear that bring some comfort. And conversely, they may hear some horror stories and become really, really worried that that could be their situation, or they could see their separation or divorce go down a similar path. So the first thing to do is really have that awareness. And people might say, oh, you need to go see a lawyer. You need to go get legal advice, find out what your rights are, protect your rights. They might hear a lot of that language. And really, I would say that's actually not the most important thing. The most important thing is them actually being in a place where they are able to absorb, take on board, and really hear the advice when that time is right. So I've met a lot of clients, they come to see me and they want that advice. The first thing I will do with them is, okay, I'll acknowledge what they want. I'll acknowledge that they've come to me with a certain expectation. And I'll say, I'm actually here to listen. And I actually would like you to talk to me and tell me about what you're experiencing, what has happened, what's eating away at you. And then after that time, we might go through a few options that are available to you. And I won't give advice, I guess, too early until they have that awareness. And often, actually almost all the time, I send them away to another professional. So I'll say, in our society, we often view that family law problems are, you guessed it, solved by family lawyers because, it's called family law. So that makes sense, right? But family lawyers are only one part of a resolution process, and they're not always, somewhat controversially as a lawyer, I'm saying this now, they're not always an essential part. Often they are, and often they're most useful. They're most useful at the end when we need to formalize agreements and make sure everything's watertight, and so everybody can move on and have a fresh start. But often when a client comes to see me, I'll say, okay, you've just talked to me about what's going on. You've just told me about what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what your worries and what your concerns are. And it's my job to say, well, that's not a legal problem. That other thing you raise is also not a legal problem. And guess what? The most important thing you raised today is also not a legal problem. And I'm a lawyer and I'm also a problem solver. So for me to best help you, sometimes you need to go and have a chat with some other people who can help you. And that might be a mental health professional or a coach to help work on their mindset. It can be a finance professional so they can work out, well, what can I actually afford? How can I actually understand my finances? And it might be a mortgage broker who, again, can work with the financial advisor to advise what's actually within their means. So overall, it means we need to take a very multidisciplinary and holistic approach. And so when people come and see us, see a lawyer, and they're starting to look around for advice, the first step is to, I guess, be aware that not everything is a legal problem, and their expectations, be very open to and flexible to having those expectations. Challenge is a strong word, but I'm going to use it anyway, but perhaps challenging their expectations and be very open to advice, which might all not immediately sound like it's going to bring about resolution, but will help move in that direction down the track. You can't always rush these things. There isn't always a magic solution to get what you want, especially when there's another person involved, that being usually the ex-partner.
Yes.
We can't control their actions. So a lawyer is only talking to one person usually, and we can only advise on one side of the story. So to be very aware that there's another person that we need to take into account. And I like to say zoom out about not only how things affect you, because we can really be quite self-serving sometimes when we're in that highly emotional state. Zoom out and think about how things impact not only you, but your children and your ex-spouse. Everything is connected.
Yes, that's wonderful, Peppy. Thank you. What I find is that at that time when the relationship breaks down, that people are overwhelmed emotionally, and also when they're not thinking clearly, when there's anxiety and they're overwhelmed. But also, I think they come to a lawyer oftentimes because they think they're going to get their safety there, that they're going to provide them with all the answers. And that's
Yeah,
not just true, because the answers are often those emotional conflicts that they're having, but they think that a lawyer will solve everything. And of course, they can't and they don't.
so,
So I agree so much with you that there are other means of support, and whether it's financial or whether it's mental or emotional. But I think to relieve some of that anxiety and to get your emotions under control for that space when you need to think clearly is just so important.
yeah,
And also it does revolve very much around the sort of, although the relationship has ended as you knew it, um, there is still an ongoing relationship with the ex-partner to negotiate this
yeah,
new phase of your life and to make these good decisions. And oftentimes when our emotions are in play, we tend to have knee-jerk reactions, and our thinking brain just goes
yeah,
away. So
yeah.
thank you for that. It's all very relevant. So, should one rely on word of mouth or do some research as well? The reason that I'm asking this is that when I was going through my divorce, or when we first separated, one of my friends just said, "Oh, I know a good family lawyer," and that's what I did.
Yeah.
I didn't look up anything then, and so I'm just asking that question more because I feel that not that I made a mistake, but I just wondered if any other people are in that situation.
Absolutely. And look, often you will trust what your trusted accountant or colleague or best friend might say.
Mm.
Uh, and, sometimes those recommendations can be great, but we should never just stop there and really absolutely do research. And many firms or many lawyers offer, a 20 to 30-minute free phone call. If that's on offer, don't feel bad about calling half a dozen firms if that's what you have to do,
Yes.
and talk to somebody and think about not necessarily the information they're giving you, but how that person made you feel, how comfortable you felt, how at ease you felt, because these things are so important. You might meet a lawyer and they say all these things that just sound like music to your ears. They might
Mhm.
say, well, you're entitled to 80% of the pool. And, if it went to court, we'd be able to get you this type of a result.
Mhm.
Or you're in a very strong position. Now, that might sound all well and good, and that might be the case. It also might not be. Remember,
Yes.
that lawyer at that point in time is also a salesperson. They're pitching to you to try and get their business.
Mhm.
So that could involve a degree of them telling you the better or stronger aspects of your case from that small tidbit of information that you're giving to them.
Yes.
So it's first of all, be very conscious of things, that sound wonderful or too good to be true. It could be the case,
Mhm.
you know. And look, on the other hand, in the lawyer's defense, they are also trying to bring a sense of comfort to you. And it can be very reassuring to hear that things are actually going well. And
Mhm.
sometimes I do speak with some vulnerable clients. Sometimes they're women who are leaving uh, a relationship where the husband often was the breadwinner and the financial controller. And hear that they have rights and entitlements is very empowering. So by all means, that's important. And if I meet clients like that, or if I talk to them and I feel that they would benefit from this type of guidance, of course it's important to empower. Advice should be empowering, it should be helpful, but we must also balance it with, remember, a lawyer, this is not their problem. They're there to assist you and work alongside you, perhaps with other professionals like coaches, finance professionals. It's not them to solve that problem for you. They work on that problem with you.
Yes.
And one of the most, I guess, important things is when you're doing your research and when you're talking to somebody, is you have to feel like you have a voice and you are on the same level as that lawyer
Mhm.
moving forward. I've heard from other professionals who work with me in the space, and they'll often talk about experiences that they have with clients who are represented by other lawyers. And that feedback sometimes is along the lines of, well, my client is a bit frightened of their lawyer. They're worried that if they say something to their lawyer, the lawyer won't agree, or it might be like, no, they need to run by the guidance I'm giving them in that perhaps therapeutic space to
Mm,
see what their lawyer thinks. And what I always say to my clients is, when you're on this journey, this
mm,
transition from being in a relationship to being in a, if you have children, a co-parenting relationship,
mm,
uh, do you feel like you're in the driver's seat or a passenger through this
yeah,
process? At all times, I'm doing my job the best I possibly can if my client always feels, for the most part, that they're in the driver's seat and that the lawyer there is sitting beside them and they can turn around and ask for directions, ask for guidance, help them navigate that conflict. But if at any time, very occasionally those roles may switch, but if for the most part you feel like you're in the passenger seat and
yeah,
the lawyer's driving, and you feel as though the lawyer's the one ultimately making those decisions and determining the direction,
mm,
then you've got to switch things up. And that might mean changing a lawyer, but I guess going back to answering your question, what other research should they do? Look up everything you can about the firm and that particular lawyer, because it'll become quite obvious if that lawyer walks the talk,
mhm.
um, if that information's out there, and then talk to them and see if you can have that rapport with them. It's so important that you get along with your lawyer, that you feel heard and feel comfortable with them. So
That's
that
great, thank you. I think that sometimes when you think about going through a divorce and engaging a lawyer, you certainly don't consider being in the driver's seat. But this is a little bit off tangent, but relevant, I think. Oftentimes, too, that process is driven by what comes back from another lawyer to your lawyer. And sometimes that's certainly out of your control. And
yeah.
that putting that into the mix can change things quite considerably, can't it?
Yes, yes. So there's always two sides to a story, sometimes more than two sides. And I think when clients come to me, it's always important for me to remind them, or even just I guess emphasize,
Mhm.
that I can't really properly and fully advise them just on their side of the story. I
Yes,
hear them, I'm understanding them,
yeah,
but I would be doing them a disservice if I didn't remind them that the other person, you may not agree with what they have to say, but
yeah,
they have a right to assert their view and give their version of events, and we can't just automatically discount it because it's self-serving to do so. So I always work with clients. Sometimes I often say that empathy is something we talk about a lot in the law, but often it's a big ask to get clients in that emotional state
yeah,
to have empathy for the other person. So rather, I reframe it this way: you don't have to walk in their shoes or feel what they feel,
mm,
but think about where your reactions are coming from. So
yes,
rather than saying, "Oh, they've done this bad thing," um,
yes,
and looking for a motivation for them, why have they done that? You might say, "Oh, my ex is just so slow at providing these documents to us. Why are they so slow? Why are they taking so long to get advice from their lawyer? What are they doing?" And switch it up and say, "Well, why do I have this need to get this information so quickly and so fast and move on?"
mm,
Uh, it's looking back on why are we feeling the things that we are feeling?
yes,
Because often, as I say to my clients, particularly if they've been the one to agitate the end of the relationship, you
yes,
might be a bit further along than the other person. You may accept the end of the relationship or the change in the relationship. They might not be there yet,
yes,
and that person and their support team might have a little bit of extra work to do to come up to where you are. So we
yes,
need to give them that time and that space. If you push them, you are likely to be met with resistance. So think about what it is with your need, and we can work on that together. what we can do to get prepared and organized while they're getting themselves organized. Because I know that lawyers on the other side, I'll talk to them and, have friendly relationships with lots of my colleagues, and they'll say to me, "Oh, my client's just devastated. They're just not in the space of mind to get all these documents together." And it's often there's a reason for it. Sometimes, yes, somebody is being malicious, but most of the time it's something else.
Yes.
It's just a manifestation of sadness, disappointment, fear that's driving their behavior, not aggression or nastiness.
Yes, for sure. I think it links back to that emotional overwhelm and anxiety. And of course, one of the things that happens in anxiety is that we freeze. We just can't act. So, it's all relevant. Okay, so this is probably overlapping what you just talked about, but are there specific questions that you should ask a lawyer so that you can find a lawyer that best suits your particular needs?
Yes, I think that, let's just address the elephant in the room and talk about costs.
Mhm.
So fees are something that, even as a lawyer, I wish we didn't have to charge them, but
Yes.
legal fees generally are not cheap by anyone's standard. And it's important to have what we call in our firm fee clarity.
Mhm.
So we're a fixed fee firm, and what we like to do with our clients is help them understand how and why they're being charged and what value they get from that. And we do charge a fixed fee. We originally had fixed fee certainty, and then we realized, well, family law is full of uncertainty,
Yes.
including what the other person does. So we don't want to be disingenuous, not deliberately, but
Mm.
by accident, in saying that we can provide fee certainty, rather fee clarity. So yes, by all means, get clear on what these things cost, because it can be an added pressure, or it usually is an added pressure during a very tumultuous time, and something that good lawyers will try and alleviate. Doesn't always mean that they can reduce their fees, but it
Yes.
can mean that they can assist by providing, payment plans.
Mhm.
There's often companies that work with people in this situation so that you can reduce the pressure of fees at that time, and then it comes out of any eventual settlement, all sorts of things. So yes, number one, ask about costs so
Mhm.
you have that understanding, and it's just one less thing to worry about moving forward. Always want to emphasize that having perhaps limited or what feels like limited access to funds shouldn't be a barrier to getting proper and good legal assistance.
Mhm.
Uh, Another question that you need to ask about is all the questions, anything that comes to your mind. There is no such thing as a dumb question.
Mhm.
And if you feel overwhelmed, information is just coming at you, just say, "I don't understand. Explain to me." And it's
Right.
the lawyer's job to distill that information and take out all the legalese and
Mhm.
communicate it to you. So lawyers should be good communicators. So
Okay.
ask the question, doesn't matter how stupid it is. If the lawyer doesn't have the answer for it, then they'll find someone who does.
Okay, thank you. And what do you see as the biggest challenges for your clients?
So I think the biggest challenges is the narrative that's in our society at the moment about what it means when we're getting a divorce. To
Right.
this day, the narrative that is strongest is that divorce has to be, excuse my French, a shit fight. So,
Mhm.
and they come with, I guess, either a sense of fear or sometimes even an aggressive sort of air about them, in that, well, I
Mhm.
need to fight for my rights. I need to fight for what I'm entitled to. So the
Mhm.
narrative of fighting and conflict is really embedded in the divorce experience, I think, not just in Australia, but universally. Uh,
Yes.
Through the Kind Lawyers movement, we're really trying to shift how people think and feel about divorce. And you said it before, Jan, you said the relationship might be ending, but it's not really ending because they've still got things to do. So
Yes.
it's changing. And so if something's coming to an end, you can go, okay, that's finished, it's done and dusted, to hell with it. But
Mhm.
when you have to nurture the next stage of that relationship,
Yes.
particularly when there are children involved, but even when they're not, because that next stage is then resolving a property settlement. And if you hate each other and you're throwing grenades at each other, that's going to be harder and harder to do. So I think the narrative is probably the biggest challenge, because there's an expectation that that's just the way it is. But absolutely not. It doesn't have to be that way. And there are practitioners, more and more of us, that are really committed to helping families navigate separation and divorce with that holistic view that we can work together, we can work with other professionals to help this family find peace and begin the next chapter in their lives. I think another challenge for people separating is, particularly for those who might even be high net wealth individuals, is somewhat controversial to say coming from a law firm, but lawyers do well out of people fighting. The business model is geared to, the longer you spend on a case, the longer it drags out, the more money it's going to bring in. Now, when you have lawyers who are by nature quite competitive, and you put them all in a firm together and they want to be the best lawyer in that firm. An old boss of mine used to clap his hands and say my best and highest use was billing. I was a good biller. I made lots of money for the firm. It didn't really sit well with me when I unpacked it all years later as I matured as a practitioner. But it does make people vulnerable in that sometimes the fastest path to resolution isn't always the most desirable for the lawyer. You know, and if there's a lot of money involved in a particular case, I know, because I've had at the time more senior practitioners say to me, keep it going, drag it out.
That's interesting. Yeah. The other thing that it's probably not your place to comment on, although it might be, but I know it does happen, is that people lie, like either side could lie. And that really does create problems of all sorts. So have you got any comments to make about that?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one. And what the issue is in the legal setting, everything is untested until it is. And when that time comes for, I guess, evidence to be tested, is when it goes before a judge all the way at a final hearing.
Yes.
And that is supposed to be, I guess, a protective factor, in that all of these things can happen in the shadow of the court, but at the end of the day, a judge will come in and make a determination. Now, 95% of cases don't get all the way there. And so, yes, people can, and I'm discovering this still in this day and age, sometimes perpetuated by the actions of the lawyer, can create or tell stories or narratives that aren't really true. At least it might not be true for the other person. And I think we need to, I guess, acknowledge what truth is, and how one person might experience a certain event one way, another person may have a completely different experience. And perhaps we need to get, I guess, less concerned with one singular set of facts and truth. And that's funny, a lawyer to say that, because lawyers are concerned with facts and all sorts of things and determining what's real and what isn't. But everybody's lived experience is different. And I think the best thing I can do with my clients, or work that I can do, that if we do enter the court space, if we do have to prepare documents which require you to put down what you believe, in an affidavit, you set out all these things that have happened to you and how you've experienced them. And then, of course, the other party has to do the same, and you might look at it and go, well, no, that's wrong. Is just be aware that the system in itself is geared to do that. It's geared to prompt you to put forward your best case and what aligns with your narrative, and as it does with the other person. And where there's diverging views, it can look like fact versus fiction, lie versus truth. So it's just having an awareness that it will feel like that very strongly at times. And the court space doesn't often give us the time or the luxury or really the attention to unpack what these narratives and stories mean. And hence why we should try and keep matters out of court so that we can work with other professionals to work out what sits behind the positions, what feelings, what motivations, fears, all sorts of things that are driving these truths, and try and keep things out of the court. But if we are in the court space working with the clients to recognize, again, it's a control thing. It's a system it's just the one we have at the moment.
Yes.
We can't control how the system is. We can't control the documents we have to file. We can't control what happens when you go into the courtroom, but you can control your response to it and how you think and feel about it.
Yes.
So that's why we like to work with the clients on, okay, this is a situation that's not a great one, but it's like an onion, I'm peeling all the layers. It's always more complex and not as simple as we might make it out to be. And just that commitment to recognizing all the layers and what they're able to control in that process. It can bring it's about the mindset, as you'd know, just having a greater peace of mind, knowing that, okay, I have an awareness, I'm able to reflect, I'm able to think about these things on a slightly deeper or a much deeper level and not be so impacted on it long term.
Yes. Actually, when you said that 5% did you say 5% don't or do get to court?
5%, only 5% of matters end up before a judge.
Oh, right. Oh, that's reassuring, isn't it?
Well, the statistics suggest so. And that's why we have to be a bit careful about statistics, because my experience is that a lot of lawyers are very comfortable and happy to go straight to court, and they'll often use court as a strategy. So you'll go to court, you'll do all of these things in a need. Everybody knows it's not the type of matter that will go before a judge for hearing.
Right.
Lots of these matters sometimes settle on the steps of a hearing because everybody knows that both people are being completely unreasonable. And it just baffles me that why are you having these conversations about what's fair and reasonable on the steps of court when everybody's in that pressure cooker situation instead of when you could have had them months ago?
Yes.
Lawyers, I've talked a lot about how court is their comfort zone. So they'll come into the court arena because that's what they know. Lawyers generally like rules and systems and regulations, and the court gives them that. When they're outside of court, they have to be a little bit more creative. They have to be a little bit more emotionally in tune, and they have to be willing to work and sometimes give the reins or hand the reins over to other professionals who are better equipped and more appropriate to manage certain areas of the dispute. Now, lawyers don't often like to give the reins away, and where do they feel most comfortable? In a courtroom setting, where they can use their skills of advocacy and all the like, and a knowledge of some very complicated rules, which, so I have some strong views about that, because we say 5% go all the way to judicial determination, but I don't know what the stats are about how many people actually commence proceedings or start proceedings. So you get a lot of matters that end up in court which don't need to be. I mean, court should be there to protect people who are, if a child's at risk of being abducted or abused, or if money is about to be sent overseas, or if assets are about to be sold without the permission of the other. That's what court's there for, to come in and go, no, right. When we use court for issues that could be resolved through mediation or another form of dispute resolution, unfortunately, I see it happen too often. And often it's one person saying, right, I've threatened court to get what I want. Now I'm actually going to do it, and I'm going to keep doing it until I overpower you. So it's like, I'm doing the arm wrestle. It's just a power play. As soon as you enter in court, it becomes a power play. And barristers, sometimes you'll get wonderful barristers, and sometimes you'll get those that wear their ability to absolutely annihilate somebody in the witness box as a badge of honor. So be very, very mindful of lawyers who are very quick to want to, talking about court and threatening court, if your matter isn't one where it's, your child's at risk of being abducted or taken overseas without your permission, or money's gone missing. If
Mm,
those things are not in your case and it's simply that the two of you can't agree, if
mm,
it's simply that you want to have 50-50 care of the children and your spouse says no, every second weekend is all I'm willing, that's not a matter that should be at court.
right. Okay.
That is not a matter that should be at court, but so many matters like that end up in court.
Yes.
It's not the best place for a child to be caught up in a dispute about those things in court. So
Thank you. And also, when it does start going through the court process, there is compulsory mediation along the way, isn't there?
there is, I mean, in children's matters, you are supposed to, unless it's an urgent matter, you have to mediate before. But
Mhm.
it's important that we don't look at mediation as a checkbox exercise, which I see happen all too often. So
Right.
dispute resolution, such as mediation, is seen as, okay, that's just something that we have to do. And then
Right.
people aren't always completely invested in that process. And sometimes mediation can happen in the court setting. So court
Mhm.
ordered, or, court dispute resolution with a
Right.
register of the court. And that can happen in I liken to a pressure cooker. And who makes their best decisions when they're under,
Yes.
pressure, like particularly important decisions about the welfare of children. And often, I don't agree with those decisions made hurriedly or in a rushed way.
Yes.
So they have there's an impact, and I think we need to take into account what the impact of those decisions are and give people the requisite time to think and reflect. Now, lawyers will be like, oh, but then they might change their minds. And I'm like, well, yes, they might, and maybe for good reason.
Yes.
And occasionally you'll get a client that, might do well in that setting and it might be good for them. But again, it's about that driver's passenger analogy. We
Mm.
don't want people, if you're going through separation and divorce, you don't want to feel like you're being taken for a ride and completely out of control and pressured into a decision. Just happened the other week. A client felt very bullied and harangued by a barrister that we had engaged. And he felt as though he had no say in the matter at all, to the point where he felt that this barrister would undermine him if it went to court, his own barrister. And so we need to be conscious, that may have not been the barrister's intention at all.
Yes.
But when people are in court day in, day out, they may not be as connected with the human side of law.
Yes.
They might just see it as just another number, and this is just get on with it. It's like I imagine it in the cattle yards, like, yep, just go, go, go. Every case deserves due care and attention. Every case turns on its own facts. And there are people in the industry who perhaps don't give people experiencing divorce and separation that respect and time and acknowledgement that is so important.
Oh, Peppy, I'm so pleased that you've said all of this. I think it's really reassuring and also enlightening for people to hear what you have said. So thank you. So just in terms of your personal take on what you do, have you learned any life lessons, or, has it changed your view about the world just because of what you do on a daily basis?
I've found that you have to walk the talk. So just talking to my colleagues this morning, actually, on a case where we perhaps maybe we were a little arrogant. So we knew that if we engaged a certain professional, their tactics were harsh, unforgiving. What's another word? Very, very, well, let's just say I call them the flamethrower. So,
Right,
and, maximum impact, but also if used, can cause very long-standing and deep harm. So
right.
there are people like that in the profession, and some might say they have their place. The
Mhm.
flamethrower sometimes is needed on some rare occasions,
Mhm.
but you use somebody like that, knowing consciously what they're like, you should expect damage that follows. So
Right. Okay.
I guess what I've learnt is that you have to stay true to your values, and
Right.
careful of working with people who may have different values, uh, because, and you know, same for clients.
Mm.
Make sure that the lawyer that you work with, you think that they're an okay person, not just an okay lawyer.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and I think the same is said, like other professionals I work with, I want to make sure that there's a certain level of decency and
Mm.
humanity within that person. There, long time ago, I remember watching 60 Minutes, and it was an investigation into victims of sexual assault who then are cross-examined, and the impact of court on, and you know,
Right.
and what's happened of late in the media of late. So it's very
Yes.
relevant. But a barrister in that case was asked how he could sleep at night after what he put through some of the victims in his very thorough and unrelenting cross-examination. And
Right.
his response to that was, "Oh, how do I sleep at night?" He goes, "On a very expensive mattress after a very expensive bottle of red wine."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and I have met people like that who take that very cavalier, dismissive approach to
Yes.
the human element that's at play in law. So my learning is, and the challenge that I've had to overcome of late, is to be discerning as to who I work with. I'm
Right.
always kind to everyone,
Mm.
but yeah, you have to find people with integrity, because, and people who walk the talk to work with.
Right. Oh, well, thank you for that, Peppy. I'm sure that's a wonderful message to end on. And if people want to find out more about you, where can they do that?
Well, they can go to www.balancefamilylaw.com.au. That's a link to my website, which has a lot of information about what we do and how we do it. I'm
Mhm.
also very active on social media, particularly LinkedIn, through
Mhm.
my name, Perpetua Kish, and through our Instagram and Facebook pages, Balance Family Law. So that's a great way to contact us, and always happy to talk through matters with people who are going through separation and divorce. We offer comfort calls, free comfort calls, so we can work out whether we're a good fit, whether we're your people and you're our people, and you know, we can work together to help you resolve family law issues.
Fantastic. Thank you. And we'll put that link on the page.
Yeah, thank you, Jan.
Thank you.